We're here in my hellhole of a lab, so I can show you how to make custom connectors and printed circuit boards, or PCBs. Making PCBs is fairly simple. If you can use a pen and a piece of paper, you can create a PCB, but there are some tricks and techniques to it. As for the custom connectors, sometimes you need a connector and you don't have it, or it's a custom connector. I was actually asked by a couple of people through email and instant message and all that crap to show my my Xbox to PC interfaces. So people were asking me, how did you get your keyboard hooked up to your Xbox? Now, the most convenient way is you go ahead and you buy the Xbox adapter. Yeah, this plugs into the Xbox. Female USB. That's pretty easily said and done. But sometimes you really don't feel like spending like the $8 for the cable and $10 for shipping. So if you notice that Xbox has the breakaway cable, I'm going to show you how to make a printed circuit board that'll fit in here, and then it gives you a female USB. So today I'm going to show you how to make that, among some other things. Shithole lab. There. I'm going to pretty much make one of these. I'm also going to show you how to make a Xbox controller connector that's actually on the Xbox, so you don't have to cut the cable to your Xbox controller. Like, a lot of people will go and get a breakaway extension cable like so, and they'll just cut it, and they'll splice in a USB cable, so now you can use your Xbox controller on your computer. But I'm not going to go and spend like $20 on an Xbox controller just to cut the cable and splice in a USB cable. I think that's kind of craptastic. I kind of liked having all of my stuff intact, so I'm going to show you how to make the female end of a USB connector. I'm also going to show you how to make an SD card connector, so hopefully, you can be able, if you have like, SD card connectors, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can add an SD card to, like the Linksys WRT. Hopefully Big Bro will show you that in a little bit. But you don't want to spend $8 for the connector and $4 for shipping. Not everyone's got a broken, SD card reader laying around, so maybe you have a better access to making printed circuit boards, and you can just put one together pretty cheaply. So we're going to go to the desk side, and I'll show you some techniques on making printed circuit boards. Alright, the first thing you need to know is this is what's called a copper-clad PCB, or printed circuit board. It is two pieces of copper metal that has a sandwich meat innard of fiberglass. To make a PCB, you take a marker and you mark wherever you want actual circuit tracks, and then you're going to dump that later on, which I'll do the do's and don'ts, into PCB etch-it solution. This is ferric chloride. I'll get into the dangers of this stuff later, but it's relatively harmless if you're not an idiot. Okay? Now, when you're designing a PCB, don't test your designs on your board. Test your designs on pen and paper. Compensate a little bit on the actual board for connectors and soldering and all that stuff, because a lot of times I see people who they just draw straight onto the board first shot and then don't realize that, oh wait, I was supposed to be able to solder onto this, like it has solder wires coming off of it, and now I have no solder points. Okay, now one of the first things I want to show you guys how to make is an SD card connector. Okay, what I did with this board right here is I took my SD card and I lined it up, okay, knowing that where the pins exactly go, and just using the fat tip of the marker. I mean, it doesn't have to be too precise. If using a straight edge helps, but I really don't care as long as it works. This is most likely going to go on the inside of a project, so hide your sin. So what this does is this is going to match up to here, okay? And then I took a piece of copper pipe. This is used to keep your copper pipes pinned onto your ceiling or onto your floor, onto the walls, whatever. I flattened it in the desk vise, and using some needle nose pliers, I made this overhead bracket. So basically what happens now is I'm going to solder this like so, and then this is going to go in here. Now, as for the connectors, the actual physical slide-on connections, what you're going to do is you're going to go and get yourself an old floppy drive cable that has the card edge connectors. The card edge connector actually has, let me see if I can get this on, where am I? Right here, has like these little tabs, okay? There's one, here's the other. It really doesn't matter if you get this thing, you know, off in one piece. It doesn't matter. And inside are going to be all of these little pins. These are like pressure sensitive little pins. You see that? I hope so. Okay? And I'm going to take these, once this is etched, and I'm going to solder them onto here. So when you slide your card in, not only does these little pin connectors have pressure pointing upwards towards this bracket, but this is also the connection that's going to connect the card to the circuit. Now, that's an SD card adapter. Now, PlayStation memory card, I mean, a lot of people got PlayStation. You know, I've noticed that the pin spacing inside of this connector here is the same pin spacing inside of here. So what you can do is pull out, you cut off the bottom row, literally you cut all of that off. Using a hacksaw, there's a spacer here and a spacer here. What you can do is you pull out the pins and you use a flat-bladed hacksaw to make those little slices, and you can actually make the mating connector for this card. Now you might not think that's all too useful, but if you Google search a PlayStation 1 card memory reader, you can actually create a very simple interface to interface your card straight into your printer port. I don't know if it works on XP, but we'll leave that for another project. Now, everything else I plan on doing is for the Xbox, because a lot of people have Xbox, and Xbox is natively USB. Okay? Now, of course, we've got the breakaway cable. Now, when you're going to make a connector, you have to go and take a look at your connector. You know, pull it away from you, look at it close, look at it at different angles, understand the dimensions of the cable. You have to understand that there is a board. I mean, the mating connector needs to be inserted into the throat of this thing. Okay, sometimes it's a deep throat, sometimes it's a shallow sow. So it's all up to whatever kind of connector you've got. Now, this connector has two rows. It's got a top row and a bottom row. 3 on the top or 2 on the bottom, depending on how you look at it. So these copper boards are two-sided. Lucky us. So this is going to be the adapter. Notice that I've got 3 on the top, 2 on the bottom. Now, taking a handy-dandy tape measure, I've measured that the pins themselves have to be roughly 1 millimeter, and the space between them 1 millimeter. Hey, it just so happens that Mr. Sharpie marker over here has roughly a 1 millimeter tip. So just drawing straight lines as straight as possible. When you're drawing lines on your board, you got to remember that this is exactly how it's going to look. So if you like scribble on it and there's like, you know, ink blobs and, you know, breaks in the ink and you see copper through it, it's going to show. I mean, it's going to look ugly. And you want reliability. So, you know, using a bright light, always make sure that your tracks are nice and solid. Like, you know, I got some breaks over here and feathering, but I really don't care. Okay? And once we etch that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bisect a PS2 to USB adapter. I mean, you probably got a ton of these laying around the house. They come with every new mouse, new keyboard. Using a very sharp utility knife, I'm going to bisect it around the side, remove this piece, and then solder the USB connection onto this, sandwich it back together, and then epoxy it. I mean, it doesn't look the greatest, but I mean, it looks much better than well, pretty much anything else I've seen people make, and it just fits in. There you go. A side note is that if you notice, this connector actually has kind of like the pin with the side with 2 pins is actually shorter on the board, is actually shorter than this top side. So if you got a lady in the house, you know, hope you all have a mother, because if you have 2 daddies, that's just weird. Then again, if you did have 2 daddies, you'd still have a nail file. Either way, you're safe. Okay, as long as you're living with either one of your 2 gay daddies or your mom or sister, go get an emery board. And what you do is at an angle, you sand it. And what that's going to allow is the taper that they have for this connector. So, there you are. That's that. Enough about that. Okay. Another thing I want to do is the memory card slot for the controller. This is going to fit inside the memory card slot, and I'm going to go and get a female USB connector from wherever the hell you decide to get a female USB connector from. You can go and get them from computer mod shops that sell like the back panel USBs. You know, you can go and scrap them again from, you know, your victimized, raped PS2 adapter. There's plenty of places you can get them. Don't ask. And again, I looked inside the controller and I measured that inside that there's a 1 millimeter pin width with a 1 millimeter gap. Again, okay, blah. Now, this pin right here isn't supposed to be there. That's actually a gap, but I put it in because of reference. I wanted to make sure that, all the pins lined up. So instead of having to take a ruler, just 1 millimeter, I think that's a millimeter, I think that's a millimeter, and I just drew straight lines. And I actually brought this up to my memory card, and I made sure that they all lined up to the pins. Now, you're still going to have to go in, and you're going to have to sand the sides down, you're going to have to make it a little flatter on the top, but we'll leave that for the post-etching. Okay, these little buggers, I've actually been quite proud of this one. I can't believe I Forrest Gumped myself into this position. I have a wireless controller for my PS2, and of course, you can tell that there's not too much room inside to crack it open and add USB ports. They do have USB ports, but that's only to add the memory cards on. Trust me, I've tried plugging this into the computer using these. It doesn't detect. So I really didn't feel like ripping out the Xbox connectors and putting in USB because I still wanted to use them on my Xbox. Now, granted, I can go and make a USB to Xbox connector, blah. I just didn't want to deal with it. I don't want to mess this thing up. I really like this. So, what I did is I opted to create the mating connector, which is around here somewhere. Somewhere. Oh, I'm sitting on it. I was wondering why my asshole was tingling. Okay. I made a printed circuit board. Okay, and here's the little fins that I've sacrificed out of that printer, the floppy drive connector. Okay. Created a PCB, printed circuit board, which just basically brought the tracks down. And as I was rummaging through my lab, I noticed that I had a couple of pieces of half-inch copper pipe. And I was thinking to myself, these almost look like it'll fit. So what I did was, this one's actually polished, by the way. This one is just stock, just laying around in the lab, just to show you it actually could look good. And I squished one. And after I got done squishing it, I said to myself, holy shit, that looks like it'll fit. And it did. Now, unfortunately, like an ass, in my excitement, I actually smoothed down this side and I polished it, and I took my files to it and I smoothed it and made it nice and pretty, and I drilled the wrong end. So, what happens now is I built this, and it fits in like so. It matches up, but, it'll fall right out. So, knowing that this fit around it, what I did was I drilled straight through this, through the back end of the PCB. I drilled through this end first, and then drilled through the PCB inside it, using the pipe as a guide. So now this fits in. Now I'm not going to feed the bolt in because I'm not going to bore you, but there you go. I'll actually put some pictures of the post process of this on the forums, and then there you go. It fits right in, and it just leads right into a USB connector. So now you don't have to go to your Xbox controller, cut it in half, which completely destroys all resale value of it, and then crappily wire in a USB connector, and you don't have to go out and buy some kind of overpriced piece of crap. Now, you can do this with PVC pipe, but PVC pipe is way bigger than this, like the outer and inner diameter, so it doesn't fit as snug. I mean, it's pretty simple. Once you have your pipe, you just put it in a vise or in a wrench, and just start squishing it. Just slowly squish it. Every once in a while, double checking for fit. Alright, still. Alright, it's a little snug, so we'll give it a little bit more. There you go. Now it fits. Still a little snug. I'd go and refine it and try to make it absolutely oval. If you don't have a vise, you can also use just a regular pair of pliers. You can use vice grips. If you don't want Mars and chew marks on the side, I would highly recommend you go and put some kind of cloth around your vise. Otherwise, it's going to get chewed up. Okay? So this is pretty much just the understanding of when you're making a connector, you have to go and look at whatever you've got in your surrounding environment and see if you can make a connector out of what you've got laying around. Let's go to the etch lab, and I'll show you the do's and don'ts of how to etch printed circuit boards. Okay, welcome to the etch lab, also known as my bathroom. Now, some quick safety tips. Alright, if you got long hair like me, tie it up, put a hat on. Because if you have your hair in your eyes, you can't see what you're doing, and right now we're about to work with acid. It's not a very strong acid.